Hello, everyone, and welcome to Crucial Conversations about Cognitive Diversity, brought to you by Bridges 2E Media and the 2E Centre for Research and Professional Development. My name is Maria Kennedy, and I have the pleasure of being your host. I'm a mom, educator, and change maker who has had the pleasure of working globally with an array of different students and their families. Today, our topic is one that is very dear to my heart. How important is it, do we think, for children and students to see examples of joy and self-care from adults and teachers in their lives? So before we delve into our topic, I am delighted to share today's conversation with a panel of amazing experts. So we'll start by having them introduce themselves. So Marc, if you'd like to unmute and let everybody know who you are.
Hi, Maria. My name is Marc Smolowitz, and I'm delighted to be here today. I'm dropping in from San Francisco, and I am the proud filmmaker of the G-Word documentary, currently in post-production. And we are hosting GTN Awareness Week this week, and our theme is #GiftedJoy. So I'm delighted to be here to contribute my perspective with this wonderful panel. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marc. Cindy, would you like to unmute and introduce yourself, please?
Unmute and show my face too.
Yes, please.
I am Cynthia Hansen, a recent graduate of Bridges Graduate School for Cognitive Diversity in Education as a doctoral student. So I am now Dr. Cindy, and I'm an educational therapist, still getting used to that. I'm an educational therapist and twice exceptional education consultant. And I've been a credentialed educator for over 35 years. And in my private practice, I use a collaborative strength-based approach, which of course, because this is Bridges, and I really work hard to help my kids grow. And I am a proud parent of 2 adult children working in their field. That's my joy, but that's okay. They're still my kids. Both neurodiverse, both crazy, and also a neurodiverse husband. And I am twice exceptional myself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cindy. So, the gorgeous Sam Young, would you mind unmuting and turning your camera on for us, Sam?
Hi, everyone. Sam Young here. I am the director and founder of Young Scholars Academy, which is a virtual enrichment program which offers twice exceptional neurodivergent gifted students talent-based enrichment courses. So our vision is to give our 2E, ND, and PG and G students just 1 hour a week of developing strengths and being with peers and mentors who are 2E gifted and neurodivergent. So excited to be here, and again, thrilled to be with all these amazing panelists. And shout out to Dr. Cindy. Woo!
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sam. So, Tiffany, could you please unmute yourself and turn your camera on for me?
Hi there. I am Tiffany Chaiko, and I'm coming to you from Honolulu, Hawaii, on the island of Oahu. I'm a second-year doctoral student at the Bridges Graduate School of Cognitive Diversity in Education. And I have to say, it has been such an amazing journey thus far, because it is so fun to be with other people who are as passionate about 2E as I am. I'm a 2E adult, 2E parent with a 2E family. I'm an Asian American and born in the US. And I'm kind of returning to graduate school. I had careers in agency public relations, logo merchandise sales, and the golf and resort market. And also in, since I have kids, a lot of community service.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And last but by no means least, joining us from fighting the battle, Mr. Barry. Can you please unmute? Well, there you go, Barry. See, you're ahead of the curve. Wonderful.
So thank you for acknowledging beautiful, sunny Lexington, Massachusetts. It's It's where I hail from, and I'm very proud of living here. My name is Barry Gelston, and people know me from a few different places. But first of all, I want to tell people that I am been an active supporter of the G Word film for quite a while. I got a chance to meet Marc about, I don't know, I think we're up to 6 years now, 5 years. And I am so proud of being a G Word supporter and proud of being a part of the GTN week and GTN Awareness Week. So thank you, Marc and Maria, for making that happen. People know me from 3 places. Being Mr. Gelston of Mr. Gelston's One Room Schoolhouse, I teach math to 2E homeschool children around the world. I am also known as the board president for the Gifted Homeschoolers Forum GHF, and our mission is to empower every gifted family to make strategic, proactive, and intentional educational choices. And finally, I am proud to also be a graduate student at the Bridges Graduate School as a doctoral student. And I have been having a wonderful experience at Bridges, and I've gotten to know everybody here through it. And it's been a really special time of my life. So that's who I am.
Thank you so much, Barry. So you already pointed us in the direction of Gifted and Talented and Neurodiverse Awareness Week. And we are so fortunate that Marc has created, this is our 2nd annual Gifted and Talented and Neurodiverse Awareness Week. And I have been blessed to have been involved last year, which was amazing. And again this year, which is it's just like mind-blowing. There's just been so much stuff going on. Before we get into our discussion, Marc, would you mind just letting everybody know what this wonderful week is all about?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Maria. And thank you to Bridges for being one of our partners on the documentary and our social impact enterprise, as well as GTN Awareness Week. So long story short, I'm making this movie. It hopes to be the most comprehensive, ambitious movie ever undertaken and delivered about giftedness. And of course, that includes our 2E populations and neurodiverse populations. But we're also a lot more than just a movie. So we are supporting a movement around the movie. And I am a social issue filmmaker. I've been making films about a lot of social issues over the arc of my now 30-year career. And when I do a deep dive, like I've done on giftedness, I also consider myself an impact producer, meaning I want to make the movie, but what happens when the movie comes off the screen and tries to do good and meaningful work in communities? With the G Word documentary in particular, we decided to scale up that enterprise while we were making the film in a pretty intentional way about 3 years ago. This coincided beautifully with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and gave us a lot of time to sit at home and work and think about how we wanted to have an impact. And so we scaled up a lot of different things in 2020 and 2021 that were virtual and deeply global by design and about impact. And last year, we did the first ever GTN Awareness Week powered by the G Word documentary, the Gifted, Talented, Neurodiverse Awareness Week. I want to go on record that we're probably not the first people to ever think of this idea, right? There are a lot of awareness weeks out there around a lot of issues and a lot of causes, or an awareness day, an awareness month. October is an awareness month of all kinds. October, we have National Coming Out Day on October 11th. I mean, this is a thing that helps organize communities and fundraising and marketing and engagement and awareness campaigns. And while I noticed some fits and starts to have gifted awareness weeks and gifted awareness celebrations, I hadn't seen a kind of, ongoing annual event just yet, something that was truly international, took advantage of this virtual moment that we live and work in, and tried to bring people together to celebrate. Of course, to advance our cause, to find opportunities to help others who don't understand have more understanding, but really to empower us, right? And I liken it a lot to LGBTQ Pride Month. I'm openly queer, and every year in June, we get our month. We get to celebrate who we are in the spirit of love. And it's been going on now for more than 50 years since Stonewall, and look at how we now come to expect it, right? And even our straight allies embrace it, and we're all in June having that celebration, and it's beautiful. And it just dawned on me, like, why the heck can't the gifted, talented, neurodiverse communities have 1 week? Just 1 week a year, right? And that was the guiding principle. So we started it last year, and it kind of blew our minds, the interest and kind of the excitement about it. I think we had more than 2,000 people register from 16 countries last year. So last year we did all the programming ourselves. We produced it in-house, and we invited our partners and invited advisors and experts to participate with us. This year we've taken a different approach. We've come up with a theme, which is #GiftedJoy, or more pointedly is how we bring gifted joy and equity into focus, how we bring those two themes into focus, equity and joy. And can they be in the same conversation, right? Can we be committed to equity and also be committed to joy and celebration? I think we can. I think joy belongs to every community. And that's an important thing we're going to talk about here today, is how we can lean into that and help all of our gifted and twice exceptional kids and adults feel that way and experience that. And I have some ideas about that. But our GTN Awareness Week hopefully will be ongoing. Hopefully there'll be a 3rd annual one next year. It will be a part of how the movie rolls out when it's done. And it's really meant to celebrate all of you who are here today, all of us who do the work, and really empower us to think about how we want to have an impact in the world. So I know that the links are floating around there in the chat or the Q&A box. If you register for our GTN Awareness Week, you'll be able to access all the webinars and all of the virtual events for free, online at your own convenience, and there's great programming. So this last year was really kind of diversity, equity, inclusion, kind of gifted 101. We did sort of 9 hours of events that were very focused on introducing you to all those important topics. And that archive is there. This year is more specialized. It's more coming out of the passions of our partners and advisors. And I'm so delighted that everyone stepped up literally around the world to help us produce these events. So thank you. So that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marc. So joy's the theme, right? And it's quite interesting because we've talked about gifted, we've talked about challenges, we talked about strength, but often our children and even us hide our gifts. We hide our light under a bushel because we're frightened often of standing out to be different. This morning, as I opened my email, I got an email from John Maxwell, who I follow, and I almost cried because his message this morning was to choose joy. I went, oh my goodness, did he read my mind, right? So in his leadership podcast, it says, today's leadership lesson is on joy. When you are around people with joy, they are a joy to be with. It's a wonderful thing to have joy. It's contagious. It's, oops, sorry, my eyes. It's a choice. Choose joy. You'll be glad that you did. And so I just thought, that's definitely an omen and a sign. I'm reading The Alchemist about omens and signs. So I'm going, definitely an omen, good omen, definitely a sign that we have to talk about joy. And I love the concept of choosing joy, because often we don't realize that we should choose it or even how to choose it. And so my first question out to our panelists today, can you share with us how you have either modeled gifted joy, have chosen gifted joy, how you are joyful? What is your joy? So let's kick off with your own personal joys, if that's okay. Do we can go in the same order, or we can shovel it up a bit?
I can start and try to be brief, since I kind of introduced myself already. What I'll say really quickly before I tell you what, is my gifted joy expression is that, in the gifted worlds that we all move through, there is so much trauma, right? Trauma. I think we know that. The challenges are there. They're very real for people, right? But if trauma is the only reason that people are showing up, why are we even in a community? Right. So as we kind of develop this conversation today, I think that's also what I think about a lot when I'm thinking about gifted joy as an expression, is that we're pushing through this trauma together. Right. And I really feel like one of my personal mantras around how I combat trauma is the theme of empowerment. And I've always said those things are sort of two sides of the same coin. So trauma and empowerment, you kind of can't have one without the other. Right. And we use empowerment journeys and narratives to push through the trauma. But empowerment is a really individual narrative, right? Whereas joy is a communal one. And that's where I think joy kind of hits, like the rubber meets the road for me a lot in my life, is community, right? The communal collective experiences that I avail myself to that give me joy. And for me, I've really gotten that experience through activism and kind of organizing my life in ways where I can give back to my community. Typically, those are opportunities. I'm not alone. I'm involved with community. I'm engaging with other people, doing important things that help improve the world, right? I'm Jewish, and there's a phrase in the Jewish faith, tikkun olam, and tikkun olam means to repair the world, right? It's a concept that I have really leaned into my entire life, from the time of my childhood through my young adulthood into my adulthood, that if I'm doing things that are in the spirit of tikkun olam, that I am coming at the world in a reparative way, in a restorative way. And that gives me a lot of joy. So my activism gives me joy, my volunteerism gives me joy. And when those things get me in community with other people who care about those similar causes, that gives me joy. And I believe strongly that something happens in my brain that is chemical. When that happens, that I just feel better when I'm doing good in the world. And that doesn't make me better than anybody else, because I think that these things can also be, beautifully selfish in that sense. You can experience joy just for joy's sake for yourself, for sure, right? But I think that when it is communal, when it is collective, when it is shared with others in experience, man, is it inspiring. And it can really feel like we're doing things that are just bigger than our own story, bigger than our own lives. So for me, I check the box with activism, volunteerism, places where I can get involved in my community and give back, and do that in ways that I can feel organized and clear on why I'm doing it, why I'm showing up. So that's my joy.
Beautiful. Barry, would you like to go next?
I'd be happy to. Thanks for asking. I wanted to jump in here because I relate so much to what Marc said in a lot of ways. I am somebody who needs to have my passion projects, but passion projects that connect to giving back and making a difference. I really, in my own way, I want to make continuous positive change in the world. And it's not something you always want to say out loud because it sounds a bit self-aggrandizing, but I think it's really important to do that and to make that happen on a daily basis. And to go along with that, part of my other joy in life is that I love projects. I love being involved in projects, and I love building community, and I love building networks of people, which is, really what brought me to my work volunteering in the G2E community, where, my work at GHF is always around how do I organize people? How do I build more projects? How can I empower, great word, Marc, how do I empower people within the organization to empower other people out there? So empowerment becomes an institutionalized process, which is what Marc is talking about here. And the other thing that's a big deal for me is being with other gifted and 2E people. And, everybody here on this screen is somebody that I know and I really enjoy spending time with. And because it's really important to me to find other people who just think and feel in a similar way. And it's really hard to do, which is why the internet is so important in my life. And I found that also in my teaching online. And that was my first introduction to this world, and making those connections with parents and children and going, wow, this is my community. I didn't know that these were my folks. So my joy comes from doing, making, and here's the other one too, silliness. Silliness is really important to me, and I love to be silly, and I love to be with other people who enjoy being silly for the sake of being silly.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Off you go, Cindy. Thank you.
Both of you, riff. This is called riffing. Very community, community is huge. Being neurodiverse, being dyslexic, being ADHD, school was always horrible for me. When I got into the Bridges family, and that's what it is, for the first time, I had that community that said, I was okay as I was, and started to feel joy in doing work that was difficult because I had other people to talk to about it. There was community to discuss. Being at a school about twice exceptional with other twice exceptional students or with compassionate people who get me changed my view of myself. So it brought joy into my being in a way that I holy cow, I can't even express from Scott Barry Kaufman teaching me that ADHD is all about saliency, and my chaotic mind, our colleague Marcy Dan always have to do a shout out that she said, yeah, you're going to do educational therapy different. And from that point, at the very beginning of my life there, I started letting my families know that I'm neurodivergent. And guess what? That wasn't a put off. It was a, oh, so you can really talk to my kid now. And, you know, I wear two hats sometimes when I'm intaking, when I get calls, and it's service to others. So Mark, you know, Tikkun Olam, yes, I don't know how you can be, and this is absolutely my own point of view. I don't know how you can be Jewish and not be born to heal the world. But I know that I am the result of my own parents. So, who are incredible activists. But when I start talking to a family, I might be having a terrible day. I might be low. I didn't get my work done. I didn't do this. I didn't go for my walk yet. And I might be feeling low. But as soon as I start talking to a family and my insights are lifting them up, when I start working with a child and for the first time, instead of scowling, especially my teenagers, they start laughing with me. And they get it when they have those aha moments. And when we can do that together, it's like nothing else. And so my empathy is a gift that I denied many, many long years, but it is a gift. And it brings me joy because it allows me to serve these other kids. And like I said, when I first talked to them, I have two hats. My volunteer hat as president of Tri-County Gate in Southern California, and my I gotta make money hat, right? Which is not really there. It's a side, right? Sam, you get it. It's a side thought, but it's necessary. But I don't think of that when I'm working with my kids ever. I think, how am I going to help this family understand themselves? And whether I hear from them or not, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I've helped somebody understand themselves, understand their kids. So that's part of how I heal I heal the world, I heal myself. And it just like, I'm always 100% when I'm working with my kids. So anyway.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cindy. Tiffany, would you like to go next, please?
All righty. You noticed me scribbling or moving around. I was just taking some notes on what everyone was saying and looking at what I prepared for today. And it is interesting to me that we are connecting a lot of points that I was saying. I mean, Mark brought up community, and Barry talked about doing and making. And my thoughts about all of this are coming sort of from a multiple perspective. I'm a 2E person, I'm a 2E adult. I've also taught design thinking, so I'm super into creativity. And so I kind of delved a little bit into some research because that's me. I mean, I love learning new stuff. And so I went to the library. And so my ideas kind of center around self-determination theory. Some really great research from Baum and Owen from 1988. And their research found that a 2E gift is creativity. And then Kaufman and Baguetto talked a little bit more about creativity, but I wanted everyone to kind of envision, I wanted to give you sort of the feel, what does it feel like to be in an environment that feels joyful, right? We've all talked about our experiences and I kind of wanted to go into like, how do we create that? I'm really interested in creating those joyful environments. And so imagine an environment where your ideas blossom. They unfold, they transform, they burst out with exuberant enthusiasm, but they can also be quiet and really intense. You know, there can be a really deepness of thought. And like, you know, 3 of our panelists said today, you can really feel like you're being yourself. And I think that's something that's really important. And I saw it when I worked with kids in my class, and I wanted to describe to you kind of different ways that different kids kind of embrace their joy. It's really interesting for me. And like Marc, I think my heart got bigger in trying to create this environment and seeing the kids just so joyful in doing things. So for some of them, it was realizing that they had choices and their ideas mattered. Like somebody actually cared about their creative ideas. Their ideas were recognized by their community, by their peers, by me. And you could just see this mutual level of respect rising in them. I mean, our class community started to radiate this positive energy, and it was bright. I mean, it was intense, but at the same time, it was calm and chaotic. And I know that sounds like a dichotomy, but that's what it's kind of like when you're in this joyful energy with kids. And I also saw their intensity just turn on. Some kids just light up when they have a really complex creative problem. They can solve it faster. They can go more deep. And you know what? It's just because they can. I mean, it's just like, I can do this, and they light up. And they finally had that opportunity. You kind of see, you know, what we're doing. There's some scaffolded choices. They felt like they could connect with other people. And what was interesting for me is in that space, I also shared some of my experiences. And one of the things that I really love is quilting. And I kind of taught myself to quilt. I didn't know how to do it. It wasn't, okay, this also like Barry, this is going to sound pretty funny, but it wasn't really hard for me. I taught myself how to quilt. I just got the spatial part of it. You know, I understand how to do free motion quilting. And then I talked to them about how I put my ideas together. Like I will research, you know, like 20 different ideas at the same time. I will draw out a web of ideas. I will draw out how the ideas are all interconnected. I'll do some fast sketches. I'll go for a walk, and boom, the idea will normally emerge, one of many. And that process is super fun for me. And so I think that's really where I wanted to put my input is, what does it kind of feel like to be in this joyous space? And then sort of in a creative way, connecting to joy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Sam, can you share, please?
Yeah, well, I think like Tiffany said, everyone, you know, it sort of plants the last seed in your ear and starts to grow a little bit. And I really do see like the trends and the through lines. And I really agree with a bit or a piece of what everyone has said today. But for me, as an ADHDer, it's always been the pursuit of the rush. Like I've always gotten joy from moving around and maybe throwing my elbows up and building new projects and doing new things. And as I've gotten older, I think that the joy also comes from challenging myself to stay in that space, right? And see things through and develop systems. And there's sort of the immediate gratification of the shiny new thing. And then there's also the sort of deeper internal gratification, which I experience of actually building something. And as I have this sort of out of body experience, I listen to everyone else talk and kind of see myself and you. There's something about building. It's always been present in my life, building community, connecting people, building things. Cindy used to always tease me about how I always had this like old ratty truck, and I'd have like 3 motorcycle projects because I just love to start things. And for me, the thing that has been probably the most fulfilling has been building community through the vehicle of entrepreneurship. That's kind of become my magnificent obsession. Last week, I was in seminars for 16 hours, like learning different strategies so that I could like really offer value to people and create this dream and realize this dream of building something that is bigger than me, that's everlasting, that is a home for the homeless, that offers a shelter for those who don't have that. And I find so much joy, so much excitement in building that community, and then of course having the community to pick me up because I'm failing all the time and it's difficult and it's challenging, and then having the people in this room who I've been on calls with, my supportive family, and so many other people who have just been a part of this build out, have been a part of this journey. So I guess it's sort of a long-winded answer, but I think building, pursuing my interests, and doing something that's bigger than myself, and doing it in a way that constantly engages me, keeps me up at night, gets me excited to get out of bed, and all of the things that come with that too.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, everybody. As an educator, for me, the joy has always been in the success of my students. When somebody can do something either for the first time or they've stayed in the struggle and been able to finally master, it doesn't matter what it is. For me, that has always been joyful. One of my favorite things to tell people is that when I was in Louisiana, I taught at a charter school, and one of my students, he was about 2 foot nothing, had ADHD and was very vocal. And he used the vocalness to mask the stuff that he really struggled to do. And we were doing a Black History Month project, and we were doing a wax museum. And I gave these children a whole lot of various things that they could do, basically so that no matter what their learning challenge was, there was a way that they could present. And at the beginning of the project, he said he couldn't do it. And I'm going, well, that's okay. Maybe we should sit and talk about it and see if there's some way we can do it. And finally, I coaxed him into learning a little bit about his person and reading it off cue cards. He was going to read it off cue cards. He didn't have to memorize it. We did a whole display. He got to come to school dressed as his hero, and he was just going to read his cue cards. And we had 2 cue cards. Some of my kids had 9, some had more, some did all kinds of interesting things. This kid had 2 cue cards, right? And so they were all spread out in the gym. And it was very cute because there was a little button on the floor that said press. And when somebody came up, they pressed it, and my kids came alive and talked about their person. So the very first person that came, pressed his button, he read from his cue card, right? He read the 2 cue cards. He was so proud of himself that he'd read the cue cards. He came and told me, and we celebrated that he had read his cue cards. I'm going, I'm so proud of you. Well done. He goes, yes, I did it, miss. I'm going, yes. I said, so are you up for doing it again? Sure, he said. So off he went. He did it 9 more times. And this little kid's face, because by the time he was on about number 3, he didn't need those cue cards. He knew what he wanted to say. And he was so excited that people came and listened to him. And his face, the grin went from here to here, and that grin he walked around with for weeks because he remembered the emotion and how proud he felt of himself. And to this day, anytime I think of Louisiana and I think of my class back there, I remember this child who was a challenge, but how he was successful, and that joy just for me is just so warming. So there we go. I was that kid. I totally so feel you. So we have lots of parents with us, right? And so a lot of you are parents. Part of the problem as a parent is, how can we ensure that our kids are joyful? I know we said to choose it. I know we've talked about the environment, but can you give any pointers for our parents, how they could provide that environment so that their kids can have some gifted joy? Cindy.
I became infamous in our circle of elementary school families because I had that junk box. I had that maker space. I didn't know it was called that at the time. But the kids could always go into the kitchen. Yes, they had to spread out a blanket because I was that mother. But they could always go into the kitchen, grab Legos, grab clay, grab whatever from the box, and just do stuff over a period of time. And my only rule was, if you haven't touched it in 4 days, clean it up. But they would always come back until they were done. And if you could tell that they were just thinking about it and percolating, then I let them have it. I didn't do this at the beginning, okay? I had really great mentors and coaches because my kids had fabulous first kindergarten and second grade teachers who mentored me as a parent. So I'm not alone. But when we created that makerspace for them, and I started listening to why they did certain things and asking them questions about, where did that story come from? Where did that fact come from? Because I had a factoid kid too. And he would make up facts because they sounded like they should be right. And so I thought I was believing him for a long time. So this is a second story. I was believing him for a long time because he was so imaginational. I loved it. Talk about joy. I had to start saying, so what was your source? And again, coached from the side. What was your source for that piece of information? And he would either tell me where he found it, right or wrong, or it makes sense, Mom, doesn't it? And it's like, yeah, it really does. So that's that creativity that our kids have, and embracing it and embracing their way of doing things that might be different than what we need them to do. And if you're not into that mess on the kitchen floor that you have to walk around, or the Legos that you're constantly stepping on, know that they're going to go to college one day and all of that's going to be gone and your feet will be fine again. But also that there's other ways for kids to be creative in other spaces, and following them a little bit. And I think the biggest thing as a parent that brought me to educational therapy is understanding that kids have their own way of organizing things, and it's not always our way, and to find out what works best for their brains. And as much as they might seem like they're just like you, or just like grandpa, or just they're their own beings, and they need their own things.
I love that, Cindy. Thank you so much. Barry.
So from my perspective and experience as a dad, and also as a teacher of 2E kids, I find that the most important thing is to create a safe space for them. And safe space means something different to different people and different populations. And for us, I think it really means a low emotional energy space where we're not feeding intensity into the system, into the emotional system. And it's also about allowing them to feel connected to me as a dad, and also as a teacher. It's important for there to be a relationship. When I was younger, the standard thing was always that a teacher should be someone who's kind of neutral or objective, which to me offends everything about the idea of teaching, because it is about an individual and making the personal connection. And I think that's the big thing for each person, for the adult parent, to see them for who they are. And I think Cindy got kind of, made this point too. And they're not grandpa, they're not the cousin, they're not you. They're their own little special person. And how do you connect with them for their interests and what they're excited about? And then I'm going to steal Tiffany's thunder here as well too, which is because she loves to talk about self-determination theory. And so what this comes back to are these three pieces of, connectedness, competence, and autonomy. And kids and just people in general feel joyful when they're motivated and they're doing, and they're in a space where they're making things happen. So what I really was talking about there was really the connectedness, and also a little bit of like the Maslow piece of how do you build that safe space to create a self-actualization. And I think all of that together, and we can do this not just in a parenting or a working with children's thing, but just with our neighbor, our friends, our loved ones, strangers. We are all in this thing, and I'll come back to what Marc was using, that E word again, empower. This is also how we empower people, by giving them that love, support, connection, and helping them to make things happen on their own.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Barry. So sticking with parents for a minute and possibly maybe bringing in teachers though. What's the difference though? I know you said that the children aren't their grandparents, aren't their uncles, aren't their aunts, they're their own individual humans. But sometimes though, we're the parent and we know what's best for them and we need them to do this and they need to do it now. Otherwise, they're just not going to be where they're supposed to be. How then, as a parent, can we not be so passionate? Any pointers maybe that would help us as parents own our joy so that we can free our children up to own theirs? Because I love that, the autonomy, right? That autonomy is so important. So I think, how can we give up some of that control? Because I'm a control freak. How do we give up some of that control to empower our children to be autonomous? Go for it, Sam.
So admittedly, I'm arguably, one of the only, or maybe the only non-parent here. So let me qualify that and just say that. But as someone who has worked with kids, and I always like to say, like, I'm not a parent, but I may spend more time with your kid than you do. When I think about this, I often like to think of like the X and the Y axis, right? Like, how can we put our students in environments where they're going to be with other people who are like them and be with mentors who are not you, not the parent, who can maybe let go of that vision you're talking about, Maria, what, the way things need to be or what we ought to be focusing on, and just have like quirky people kind of who can sort of serve as someone who's going to stimulate, question, push, support, encourage, all these things. I had a student who is, the mom reached out to me last week and sent me an email that made me cry, actually. And she said, my son had this really difficult week at work, at school. There was this thing, it caused a meltdown. But she said he's requesting to be in a different class because he said his friends are in a different Young Scholars Academy class. And that's the first time I've heard him use that word. And I was just floored. And I literally just got goosebumps talking about it. But this idea that, again, the X and the Y axis, right? If they can look over and be with other students that are like them, I don't know that it matters as much, like if they're ticking the boxes and doing the things that like they have to do. I had this is a humble brag here, but I got to do something on my bucket list yesterday. I interviewed Dr. Joseph Renzulli, which I was like shaking the whole time. And I did the worst job ever because I was so nervous. But meeting with Dr. Renzulli yesterday was such a brilliant reminder that like we need to be in that space where our students are, in the center of their three rings, right? Where they are tapping into their strengths, they're tapping into their interests, they're getting that time to focus in on what they love, right? They're committed to tasks because they're obsessed about it. And it's just so important that we can steep our kids in these environments. I'm, again, not a parent, but I know it's so difficult to see what other kids are doing in other families and feel that like lateral and top-down pressure. What about college? But I think if I could leave you with any advice, it would be just let go of what your kid's doing and let go of how they get there, and just encourage the hell out of them to do what they love, what fills them. Because again, we're talking about joy. There's nothing more joyful than a life full of pursuing one's passion. That's all we do in this world. We contribute that way. So yeah.
May not be a parent, Sam, but your advice is great. So Mark, go on, you want to wade in?
Yeah, also not a parent here, but I think, can maybe add my perspective a bit, because I've been pretty active as an uncle over the years. My nieces are now in their 20s, and I've seen my sister and brother-in-law raise them here in San Francisco. They've gone to public schools, and I have a lot of friends who are, at that time in their life where they have kids who are, going through all these challenges. And I think what I know is that we are living in a very specific time, in a very dynamic moment in this century, right? And what we know about this century is that this is the neurodiverse century. And brain science and neuroscience are teaching us that the brain is actually much more complicated and nuanced than we ever thought. In fact, there's a lot of research that indicates that each of us has a singular, what they're calling brain fingerprint, right? So much so that how we express ourselves in a gifted sense or a twice exceptional sense or a potentiality sense. I really love the word potentiality, and I think many of us might relate to the idea of being a multi-potentialite. Is that it's very difficult and unnatural, I think, to sort of parse out our lives in ways where we're not, to compartmentalize ourselves, right? Work, life, school, all these different parts of who we are. And I think as we age into adulthood and we move forward in our life and we're kind of forced to sort of narrow the playing field into these roles and identities, and parenting is one of them, that there's just this kind of, we become less open almost by default to the fact that the brain really doesn't operate that way. It's not really meant to push us into these different compartments. And kids are still at that stage where they are really open to that very natural and organic expression of who they are and how their brain works. I personally believe there are more neurodiverse people than less. There are more twice exceptional people than not. That giftedness and 2E and neurodiversity are all part and parcel of the same sets of experiences and behaviors. And so if that is true, and I really think it is in this century, especially given what we're starting to understand about the brain, we got to give our kids a break, right? And understand that if we try to put them in boxes, it's very unnatural, right? They're not going to react well more often than not. Some respond well to that sort of organizing, but where we find joy is in our most organic and authentic expressions of ourselves, right? Of ourselves. And we got to find those places and spaces where we can support our kids, even just a few hours a day, a few hours a week, to lean into that part of who they are, their personality, their expression, their gifts, their behaviors that give them a sense of autonomy, right? And I think sometimes as adults, we have to sort of step back and really look for those opportunities, listen to our kids, and lean into, well, what do they need in order to find themselves in a more joyous space? Especially if a kid is struggling, like we really should prioritize that thing that makes them happy, that thing that gives them joy, and providing those spaces for them to explore that part of who they are. And I think that's when it all starts to make sense to me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to pop it over to Tiffany. What can you share with us on this subject?
I think Marc really hit it on the nose about exploring. And I have two very different twice exceptional kids. And so, like many of us, we've talked about the diversity, but I have some tactical stuff for parents. So take a deep breath and really be open. Open to multiple ways to get to the end. And, when I talked about that creativity as a strength, in the tactical sense, that could mean that when you're wanting to go somewhere or trying to suggest something, in the back of my mind, it's creativity. So what that means for parents is being open to the fact that your child is going to have some creative solution to something that you didn't even think of. I call it the third way. So when we're negotiating, it's all right, here's choice A, here's choice B. They come up with choice 12 and Z. And usually those choices or those solutions are much better than something that I thought of. And then they're so excited that they came up with a solution that they liked and they want to do, they go off and do it themselves. The other tactical things that I think for parents specifically is at the right time, asking those, and Cindy kind of touched on this, tell me more questions. So if you can get your kid when it's a quiet moment, it could be walking your dog or, for me, it's in the car. Tell me more. What are you thinking? Why did you think that? You're encouraging their complex thinking, but then that as a parent gives you tips on what are they thinking? What is important to them? What are the topics they're thinking about? And sometimes they've taken an interest and they've creatively applied it to something else that you cannot see the connection, but they see the connection so clearly and they want to go in that opposite direction. So for example, my son, when he was in lower elementary school, loved to build flashlights, right? It's components, it's building things. All of a sudden he was interested in muscles. Now, to most people, there's no connection between building circuits and muscles, but for him, it's very similar. And he has a very good sense of that. And he's passionate about both. And then the other one is active listening. Okay, I know that parents are doing, all of us are doing multiple things at the same time. But what's worked for me is when I've just stopped. Now, it doesn't mean you have to look at your kid in the face. You just need to stop moving so that they know that's from your body that you're actually focused on whatever it is they're going to say, right? And you're giving them the choices, you're asking, you're clued into what they're thinking. And that helps to kind of work together with your child to find the way to get to where you need to go. So I think some of those tactical things are fall into kind of what everything that everyone else is saying, but just at the more hands-on, like, how do I do this today? And I think you can use, finding the choices, being open to the choices, the creativity, creative problem solving, and then the tell me more and active listening. So that might be helpful.
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Tiffany. That I'm writing notes. I'm just like blown away. That is super and awesome. I can't believe it. We have 8 minutes left. Okay. So people, our time has blown through because you are all amazing and it is wonderful getting to spend time with you. So in under a minute, can you all give a parting piece of advice or share a joyful session? 1 minute. Barry, you want to kick us off?
My pleasure. So, I've been thinking about this. I just came back from vacation, and there's a flip side to this intense passion project obsession, which is that I get burnt out, and I burn out pretty hard. And we just took 2 weeks vacation in Europe, and it was a great chance to just rummage through the art museums in Europe, and without a project and without all those things, to just stand in awe of the beauty of other people's work was such a wonderful switch for me. And it gave me so much joy and it also replenished me. And I think that's also an important part of this equation, because we do burn out because of our intensity, but having a place to go and just do something different for a couple of weeks can really make all the difference, and be joyful in those moments, and prepares me to come back and engage in all the projects and the things that I love now.
I love that. That's it. Let's avoid the burnout. Cindy, what would you like to add?
First of all, save the chat. I've been trying to take notes, especially when Tiffany was talking. Like, these are great. I come back to an idea that I came up with my son called fractal thinking. So as math geeks know, a fractal is when you start, it's going off on a branch. In nature, it's like a tree. You go off on one side, you go out to a branch and keep on going to the leaves. And my older son created this wonderful image for me of a tree. It's a brain. Yes, frontal lobe. It's got an apple stuck on it because, that's, and it falls down. So you go through that fractal and you go out into the world, and the teacher tells you, think about this, and starts talking. And our kids do. They not only think about that, but they think about all of these things. So teacher might be talking about I'm going to make it much more direct, the price of gas. And the child all of a sudden says dinosaurs or Tyrannosaurus Rex, or knowing the kids, it's much more specific plant that might have been in that era, right? And they shout out because they're so excited by their thought process. They have no idea that the teacher is way beyond that and on to another thing. My joy as a parent, my joy in giving my child to the teachers was when we figured out how to say, how did you get there? Instead of stop interrupting, how did you get there? What was your journey? I wish I was in your mind. And I'll tell you that metacognition that we started to build when I learned to ask changed our lives. And I know it bonds us still as he is an adult. And he actually started saying, "Hey, Ma, you want to know how I came up with that one?" And it's like, yes, please.
Oh, that's brilliant. I love that, Cindy. Thank you so much. Sam?
Yeah, thank you. This is a great question. And Cindy, I also like that your son sounds like a 1930s gangster. Hey, Ma. Anyway, I had this sort of mantra, which is just zoom out, like let go of what you think. You know, Sir Ken Robinson once said, the late Sir Ken Robinson, like we've all had an opinion. Sorry, we've all had an education. We've all had an education and we all have an opinion about one. And just because you had one doesn't mean it was the right one, it was the best one, or your kids should be that way. And it's so important that we let go of what we think education needs to be, what it needs to look like, because it doesn't at all prepare our students for real life, right? So when I say zoom out, what I'm saying to you is think bigger than school, think bigger than education. What is a society? What are contributors? Who are movers and shakers? There are people that find really niche problems, gaps, issues, and come up with incredibly unique solutions. So let go of remembering right answers, let go of getting good grades and doing all these things. As an entrepreneur, as someone who I now worship people who see things differently, right? And I think that we can accidentally kill that if we're not careful. I don't mean to be drab and dramatic, but we need to make sure we're not hurting creativity, because it's arguably the greatest thing that we have. And we need to make sure that we're developing it and doing that every single day and not worrying about the other stuff.
Beautiful. Tiffany, do you have a last thought?
I do. I've been thinking about what everyone said, and I think it's really important to choose some time to do simple things like being in nature, listening to great music, I love great stories. And so when I first saw Marc's film the other year, I was so blown away because the stories are powerful and positive, and they really resonated with me. So I want to encourage people to remember those things. Remember our pets. If you're an animal lover, I mean, you know, we go to animal shelters, and invite your kids along. Maybe sometimes they need to be invited. Come hang out with me. I really love this. Invite them so they can always tell you, well, maybe I want to do something else. But I think those are my parting thoughts: is make some fun times for us and invite our kids along.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you, Tiffany. Marc.
Thank you. What a wonderful panel. You're all so amazing. And it's been just such a treat to share this hour with you. I'll leave you all with this. So we kicked off our GTN Awareness Week by me flying down from San Francisco to Orange County last weekend, where I participated as the featured speaker at the Orange County Gate annual conference, their first time back in person in 3 years. And it was sold out, 400 people, an amazing weekend. And I did 3 sessions over the arc of the main day on Saturday. And I was trying to tell a story with my 3 sessions, but it all culminated in getting a group of people at the 3rd session to kind of do a collective brainstorm around what is gifted joy, right? And how do you, in this case, mostly teachers and educators in a very diverse public school district who are trying to serve gifted and neurodiverse kids, how do you find your joy? And you know what my big epiphany was as I was doing that workshop with that group of teachers? Is that nobody has asked them that question. Okay. There were more than 25 teachers in the room who the reason they showed up to that conversation was because they were asked the question, how do you find joy in your job in doing this with these populations? And that hour with them was so moving. And we did a brainstorm with, whiteboard paper and just kind of collected their perspectives. And so what I'll leave you with is take that time to do it for yourself, to do it in collaboration with others that you have shared interests and shared passions. Sometimes it's in the place of work, sometimes it's in other places in our lives, but we deserve it. You deserve it. You deserve to feel joy and to be empowered to create spaces where you can think about that and lean into it and be okay with celebrating who you are. And a few of the teachers were so joyous to be invited into a conversation about joy that they were actually moved to joyous tears, right? One parent was in the room and she stood up and she said that it was so important for her to almost be like the fly on the wall today in a room of teachers talking about this subject, because she understands now how really hard it is for our teachers to do their jobs. And so whatever stakeholder you are out there in this space, understand that you are important, you are beautiful, and you deserve joy. And that's where I'll leave it all today. I think this is an ongoing virtuous conversation that we're all stakeholders in. So I invite people to keep having the discussion.
Oh, most definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sam. It has been an absolute delight to chat with you all today. I know I've learned so much from you, and please accept my deepest thanks for taking the time out of your schedules to share with us. Thank you all listeners for tuning in and being part of today's crucial conversation about cognitive diversity, modeling gifted joy. It's been wonderful helping you all find answers to your questions. I hope you're now inspired to use the recommendations from our panelists. I know I will. I've been writing them down. If they make a difference for you and your family, please think about emailing me and sharing what strategies you used and how they worked out. Our email is crucialconversations@2ecenter.org. I'd also like to say a special thank you to the team behind the scenes. That's JT, Stephanie, and John. I have to thank them all for their hard work and their expertise, and most importantly, their patience with me, because they really are the reason that this webcast happens at all. Next month, due to Thanksgiving, we'll be meeting on November the 9th. So we're meeting a little early. I will again have a panel with me. So our question is, so do you want to know how to find people like you who are making a difference by providing services, connections, insight, support, advocacy, and building a 2E safe community? So thankfully, we have more people becoming aware of our community. And as a result, there's more research being done into the needs of people and people stepping up to provide services. So next month, we'll have some of the people doing the research and providing those services available for you to ask them questions and to avail yourself of their services. So make sure that you join me. Thanks again, everyone. We will get a little twin.